You're watching Notepad with me, Ibrahim Sani. This particular episode is quite interesting because I have with me the lawyer as well as the political secretary to the Iskandar Puteri MP, or better known as Lim Kit Siang, Syahredzan Johan. Syahredzan Johan, of course, is an accomplished lawyer in his own right. Shah, we've had these discussions for a few times already, but the reason why I felt it's pertinent for us to actually have this particular discussion is because I want to talk about the recent by-election losses suffered by Pakatan Harapan. And up until last year, you were a rather independent individual, arguing on both sides of the case where it matters, but you did become appointed as a political secretary to an MP of Pakatan Harapan, and your position have therefore been aligned with Pakatan Harapan coalition. And with this in mind, let's start off with the first question. Are you worried about the two losses suffered by Pakatan Harapan, the two by-elections?
I think in terms of the signals coming from these two by-elections, I think in terms of Cameron, it is actually expected. Because of the simple fact that the numbers, if you look at the numbers, if there was a straight two-corner fight, I mean, it wasn't a two-corner fight, but if it was really, we're talking about just two main contenders, the PH candidate and also the Barisan Nasional candidate. If you look at the numbers, if you compare the numbers in 2018 during general elections in Cameron Highlands, compare that, the three-corner fight there, with PAS in the picture, you draw out the numbers, you would actually see that the Pakatan Harapan candidate had to make up for a lot of votes deficit. So you actually have to work in order to get those votes. And if we look at the results, there's actually an increase in the vote share, the percentage of the vote share for the Pakatan Harapan candidate in Cameron Highlands. It was a very minimal increase, about 1.2 increase, but there was an increase. So in terms of Cameron Highlands, it meant that we could not gain significant new supporters.
But before you add on, I just want to highlight the graphics. Can we just pull up the particular graphics? We've got two pages here, one on Semenyih, yes, but let's focus on the other page, the one on Cameron Highlands. Can we just switch to the other page, please? Yeah. Right, so, that sizable lead, right, 4,000 majority, that is not just a highlight towards Pakatan's deficiency. It's actually people wanting BN candidate. Yeah,
but if we look at the votes for Barisan Nasional and PAS in the 2018 general elections, the percentage of votes was actually around that. So it was not, looking at it from just the point of view of Cameron Highlands, it meant that, as I said, we did not gain new supporters, even though we now form the federal government. We did gain a significant increase, or rather a small increase of about 1.2%, but that could be attributed with a direct transfer of votes from the PSM candidate at that particular point in time, now voting for the Pakatan Harapan candidate in the by-election. So to me, the Cameron Highlands general election, by-election, it was expected. There are deficiencies on our part, but I think it wasn't really something that alarm bell should ring. But with Semenyih, that's a different situation now.
Okay. Let's pull up that graphics, that first page on Semenyih, because this is something that we want to delve into. The page on Semenyih shows that not only was there, I would argue that it's a slim majority, but independents are rising as well. I can consider PSM as independent, and they're close to 1,000 each. If they hadn't contested, one can argue that perhaps those votes can go to PH and perhaps they can win.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult to make that argument because PSM also contested in the general elections, and their vote share actually decreased to the benefit of the BN vote share. But with Semenyih, number one, it was seats held by Pakatan Harapan. Yes, prior to this, it was always BN, but we managed to wrestle the seat in the general election. So the fact that it now went back to BN is worrying. And if you look at the numbers, it's even more worrying because last time there was PAS in the picture. PAS BN, if all things remain equal, PAS BN number of votes in the general elections still gave an advantage of about 2,000 votes. Now, BN has actually won back the seat with about 1,000 plus, nearly 2,000 votes. And there was a decrease of about 5% of votes from Pakatan Harapan to the advantage of Barisan Nasional. So this is worrying because you're talking about a seat which has now flipped to Barisan Nasional. It is a seat in Selangor, which has been held by Pakatan for more than 10 years. And it is it might not be an urban seat, but it is a semi-urban seat. So these are worrying signs. And if you look at the data as well, I think the analysts will pore over all this data, but it also shows that in a lot of salurans, or rather in a lot of polling stations, the Barisan candidate actually gained the majority in a lot of the younger salurans, which we all know, the general elections was won by PH because on back of the votes of young people. So if there is now a swing from the young people to Barisan, then that's worrying.
Okay, just a little bit of context. So the smaller the saluran, saluran 1 and 2, would normally be people of older age. Saluran 3, 4, 5 would normally be younger ones.
Yes.
So again, I don't want to focus this interview just on Semenyih. I also want to broaden the horizon here and look at the national argument. Can we make that leap that people in Semenyih actually share this kind of same sentiment with the rest of the people right now? Going into Rantau by-election moving forward, do you think that there are arguments that can be presented that shows that people are slowly losing faith in Pakatan?
Okay, I think Semenyih shows that there are people who have lost faith, or perhaps they want to teach Pakatan a lesson in this, because in the grand scheme of things, it is just a state seat in what do you call that? A state which has been with a 2/3 majority held by Pakatan. So in that grand scheme of things, voters might feel that okay, I'm not happy with certain things, and I think there are a lot of things which people are unhappy about the Pakatan Harapan government. So looking at it from that point of view, yes, we certainly need to do something, address these concerns, address the bread and butter issues, and so on and so forth.
You did try to address this in your article, Counter Right-Wing Rhetoric with the New National Narrative. We'll speak about that in a short while. We'll just take a short break for these messages. Thanks for staying on with us. You're watching Notepad with me, Ibrahim Sani. I have with me a political secretary to the Iskandar Puteri MP, as well as a lawyer, Syahredzan Johan. And Shah, again, from the discussions that we had just now, we tried to do a little bit of a rough background into the whole two by-elections. But I want to also talk about your recent article that has appeared on various portals entitled Counter Right-Wing Rhetoric with New National Narrative. And I'd like to quote this particular paragraph. You argue that we reaffirm that this country is for all Malaysians, regardless of race, religion, creed, gender, class, or sexual identity. You argue that there is a place for all Malaysians under the Malaysian sun without exclusion. And I can find no one that will argue that this might not be of sound ideals. In fact, just before this interview, I argued with you very shortly that even Dato' On Jaafar has been trying to argue for these ideals. But the political reality is that sentiment on right-wing or race and religion and the numbers that assume such political constituencies will never make this happen. Is this such a pessimistic view to have, or are you dreaming of something bigger than this?
I think, to provide a context to the article that I wrote, I think what we have seen, at least in Semenyih and Cameron Highlands, is this alliance between PAS and UMNO has been successful. So, and with it comes also the right-wing rhetoric, where apart from the bread and butter issues, there's also this rhetoric and this narrative that the Malays are under threat. And I argue in that article that in order to counter this narrative, we should not go the way or tread the path that they are taking, but we should then present a new national narrative. Not something that is groundbreaking, renegotiating things, no. Basically reaffirming what has already been in place previously. things which, like I mentioned in the article, the part about everyone having a place in the Malaysian sun, these are not new concepts. You know, the very fact that we have this, what do you call that, statements prior to this is just reiterating that, but to remind people that, look, whatever it is, we might have differences. You know, I might not agree with you about certain things. I mean, there's a lot of things we agree with each other, but, you know, I might not agree with you in a lot of things. I might not agree with someone from PAS or from UMNO on political matters. But at the end of the day, can we all just agree, first starting point, that we are all Malaysians? Regardless of who you are, we are all Malaysians. We all have are Malaysians by virtue of the Federal Constitution and so on and so forth. I'm not even talking about, doing away with classes or doing away with racial identities. We're not even talking about that. We just want to start off first with saying that, yes, we are all Malaysians and we all have a place in this country.
But the fact that right-wing sentiment is on the rise, and I'm not saying or equating, say for instance, the ISED rally, for instance, with right-wing, but it does point to that direction in the sense that, ISED rally was attended by thousands of people, and, I don't know who they voted for, even if they did go to the polls in May last year, but the fact that they got so much support, doesn't this signal the fact that there is some form of bias towards a racial group that argues that, perhaps this country is not for everyone?
Agreed. And that's why I think as a responsible government, the PH government needs to address this. Needs to address this narrative put forth by right-wing elements to say that, look, you have your narrative, we are going to present a counter-narrative to that, an inclusive narrative, a national narrative, which doesn't want to exclude anyone from this country, which says that as a starting point, we are all Malaysians. And we cannot just allow it to go on. You need to tackle it. But how do you tackle it? Do we try and, outright wing them? Or do we actually, or the PH government, as a responsible government, present an alternative or reiterate what has already been in place for so many years?
You've been particularly active on Twitter trying to present arguments in support of the government or in support of the coalition. Do you think that the government is doing enough in addressing this particular topic?
This particular topic in terms of the narrative, right-wing narrative?
Yes.
I think we can certainly do more. I think for the past months, I think we have let it simmer, without presenting a counter-narrative. We've been very reactionary. We've not taken the proverbial bull by the horns to try and do something. But I think there's still time. And again, this is not about trying to win the next general elections or anything like that. It's just to ensure that we do not divide ourselves further because of political differences and because of differences, identity politics and so on and so forth.
The reason why politicians tend to divide and rule is because, quite literally, the constituency maps are drawn that way. If they perceive it to be beneficial for them to appeal to one particular race group, they will do that because the profit is there. You will gain votes. And while we can't look at redelineation until the next round, because the law is being set up as such, I'm going to argue against you that this will continue, at least amongst the politicians.
It will continue, I agree completely, and that's why we need to actually present that counter-narrative, because it will continue and it will get worse, because as people realize, or rather as the politicians realize, hey, this is my path to power, I want to get back to power, this is my way of doing it. So, as a responsible government, we need to say, hey, we're not okay with this, not because we want to remain in power or anything like that, but simply because we cannot allow this sort of toxic politics, this identity politics, to continue to drive our national agenda, to drive the national discourse. Because, or else, every single thing that comes out is going to be racial in nature. You want to, for example, you want to fix tabung haji, it becomes an issue whether tabung haji is placed under BNM, who is under the Minister of Finance, who is not a Muslim person. These kind of things. You don't look at whether we need to actually do something about the problems of the particular company, but we look at who is going to be, at the end of the day, be the person overseeing that that overseeing body.
Of course, the narrative that we speak of is an overarching argument. There are many ways to send that narrative through. One of them is through messaging. Another way is through non-communicable behavior, non-communicative behavior, non-verbal cues, whatever, right? The previous Prime Minister, he's currently a social media storm right now. He's really grabbing the headlines, for better or worse. Isn't he grabbing the narrative of a right-wing argument?
Yeah, we allowed him to, because we don't present that counter-narrative. So that's why I think the government, what it should do, coming up to 1 year, I would suggest that perhaps the Prime Minister should do a State of the Federation address. To say that,
model out of the State of the Union.
Something like that, to say that, look, after 1 year of the general elections, this is what we have done, this is what we want to do, this is what we recognize our fallacies, our weaknesses, and so on and so forth, and then present this national narrative as a way to say that, look, to move forward, this is what our government is going to stick to. These are the principles, the statement of intent that our government is going to stick to for the next few years. So use that opportunity to present this counter narrative, and after that you can just use it, to every time it comes out and say that, hey, look, this is not in line with the national narrative.
All right. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll discuss what's next for Pakatan. Don't go anywhere. Thanks for staying on with us. I have Syahredzan Johan with me. Shah, the idealism that you speak of must be married with practical, I guess, rollout. And the conversation that we see amongst elected representatives of Pakatan Harapan is actually quite messed up. Yesterday, for instance, one Adun from PKR left Sabah State Assembly to join Warisan. One was arguing with me, and they in the same team. What's up with that? That's just a symptom to the larger picture here. And of course, when we look at the national perspective, we got, 120 over MP lawmakers from Pakatan Harapan. And are they in sync with each other? Should they be in sync with each other? Or is there some form of dissent that is allowable by the respective four-party coalition under this government?
I think a certain degree of dissent in any democratic polity and institution should actually be encouraged. We don't want a situation where, like the previous administration, where everyone is just on board with what the Prime Minister has said. So dissent, I think, to a certain degree, should be encouraged and perhaps is inevitable, especially in a coalition like Pakatan Harapan, where it is not like the big brother of UMNO in the Barisan Nasional. So it's an equal coalition. I mean, perhaps not equal in terms of the seats, but in terms of within the coalition, it is equal. So you would have this sort of disagreements and all that. And I think people. This is not the first time that they're seeing members of the coalition, shooting at each other and all that. Even before becoming government, we have seen that. We have seen...
but that was before they were government.
Yes, but people still voted for Pakatan Harapan despite this. But I think what is perhaps that will go towards our trust deficit might be if there is a constant specter of people trying to, one-ups each other and all these things, which I think some people think that is what is happening in the government. So I think we need to actually sort that out. Not so much lawmakers voicing out things, but perhaps members of the administration disagreeing with each other openly, or contradicting each other openly. Perhaps that sort of communication needs to be reduced for the government to still have that trust of the people.
And of course, when we look at a functioning or healthy democracy, wouldn't we need a strong opposition? I would want to rely on a strong opposition because that is the counter, balance towards a nasty government.
Yes.
But we're hopeless against the current opposition that we have right now.
Yeah, because, and I will make the argument that the current opposition is only interested, or largely is only interested with racial and religious issues, with identity politics. We need an opposition to actually check the government on policies, on issues, and so on and so forth. But they are more interested in making the arguments or presenting the right-wing narratives. So this is where I think, or in my opinion, the civil society groups play a very important role. So you have all these NGOs, because of the fact that our opposition is not effective in checking the government because of the makeup and the politics that they play, then the CSOs should play that role to constantly question the government. And I think even the people are actually playing that role. People on social media, there are a lot of people, every single announcement, there will be people on social media who present an alternative, who will criticize, or who will pick apart those announcements and so on and so forth. So in that sense, there is a form of check and balance, not so much by the opposition, but by the people of Malaysia. So at least there's that. And I think the people have also realized that they're no longer beholden to just one particular coalition or polity. They are happy to vote against political parties who they feel that are not serving their needs.
The argument to also bring in or rope in younger Malaysians into the fray of choosing our leaders is also pertinent. The Minister of Youth is trying to push down the minimum age of voting from 21 to 18. Yeah. Is this a political move by Pakatan in trying to get more young ones to continue to vote for Pakatan?
I think no one in Pakatan would think that the vote bank of the young people is going to continue to remain with Pakatan. So I don't see it as a way to ensure that young people continue to vote, because you can always have the situation where young people turn on Pakatan. If we no longer have the same ideals which speak to the young people, they're going to turn on us. They're not going to vote for us. But we need to lower the voting age simply because we are actually in the minority when it comes to other countries in the world. Other countries have actually lowered their voting age. The UK lowered their voting age in the 70s. So what is, you can drive a car, or you can get married at the age of 18. By the time you're 18, you can do all those things, but you cannot vote.
Final question, we don't have much time left, but I really want to touch on this. Are there too much politicking and politics right now? Or, this is healthy for our country?
I think in terms of the political news, to people like you and me, there's a lot of politics out there. But I think to non-ordinary people, politics is politics, but life will have to go on. We are in it because we are, reading the news and all those. Yeah. But I think people will just continue, they have elected their government, they will make noise, they will criticize and so on and so forth. But I think it's okay. As long as the politicking is for a greater cause, I suppose. But if the politicking is, for what, as I mentioned, right-wing elements and identity politics, then of course it's not healthy. So the very fact that people are now more aware, more people are talking about political developments, that to me is healthy. That to me, it should be encouraged.
Because the MP of Pematang Pau, Huaibin Nurul Izzah, says that there's too much politics going on right now. I'm happy to do my job as an MP.
Yeah, but I think of course we all want MPs to do their jobs and all that, but you can't run away from politics in this country.
All right. Thank you, Shah.
Okay.
That was my conversation with Syahredzan Johan. He's the lawyer. He's a lawyer, not the lawyer. He's a lawyer with a private firm here in Kuala Lumpur, and also the political secretary to an MP in Johor. Thanks very much, Shah, for joining us. Until next time. Thank you.